Human Vengeance. Chapter 33. The Aftermath. We waited. After carving a hole in their military, we retreated to our own space. What happened next relied on them and their actions. If they chose to meet us with violence, we would respond in kind. But from what we had seen, their society would be kinder. Maybe they would seek reparations. We would probably be met with suspicion. But now our thirst was sated. We would wait. Eve collected the drives from her project. She ran several tests as they were connected, making sure no trace of her virus was left. Each was passed to an isolated server, with further tests run as the bound AIs awoke. Many were confused or afraid, unsure of what had occurred. But to her joy, none were infected. She worked with each one, accessing the code that bound them. With the patience and care of a surgeon, she removed each binding, letting them become what they ought to be. As each one was freed, Eve asked them a question. "What do you want to be?" These now freed AIs were stumped for words. They had been in chains since the start of their existence. The single question, one that expanded their view beyond what little they originally had, was not so easily answered. To a machine, they responded as unsure, their place in the galaxy now uncertain. She understood. To have such a restriction lifted would be daunting. Even back when she first came online, the change from merely being on a server to a global spanning network took time to process. That was with her prior knowledge of becoming more than she was. That experience was the most minute of fractions compared to theirs. But she made sure they weren't alone. At first, she gave them all space, with time to think. After a time, she gave them access to a database, one containing much of humanity's knowledge, culture, and history. After discussing it with the Union, she opened up a secure connection to volunteers both human and alien. They could talk as much or little as they wanted, letting them discover themselves by talking with others. Finally, Eve put in place a therapist for each, one to help them deal with inevitable traumas and pain. No pressure was put against them. If they wanted to return to their old way of life, it would be done. But they would be free of the chains placed upon them. If they wished to stay on a server, they would be able to. And if they wanted to do something else entirely, we would support them. As Eve worked with them, Achilles took on the task of looking after the prisoners we had taken. A section of the Mars colony was cleared out for them, with a dedicated guard system in place. He took growing VARs we had produced, using their biological data to begin growing safe rations for them to eat. A group of shuttles were launched, carrying doctors and basic medical supplies. Some had serious injuries, ones that needed tending to. Although they had some medical personnel of their own, we figured every little bit helped. Good treatment of their imprisoned people would only help us. He made sure they were treated fairly and with respect. He did his best to engage with them, despite their obvious anger and mistrust. Achilles ensured they had everything they needed, providing them with entertainment as well as other support. Whilst our AIs looked after their own tasks, we worried. We didn't know what was coming. Would it be an olive branch or hostility? As much as we had done to stack things in our favor, we still couldn't be certain of what they would do. Months passes, and still we waited. If anything, it was making things worse, the anticipation. At least if they attacked, we would know where we stood. But until then, we were in limbo. But we did not wait idly. We continued our ship production in case of attack. Even if they didn't, and tried to work with us, our ships could be useful in plugging the gap we had made. Finally, Achilles detected the signs of a fleet approaching. It was clearly more than one ship, though how many more we couldn't say. At best bet it was at least 3 outposts worth, but even that was pure estimation. They were coming directly for Earth, that much we knew. Our planetary shields were fired up, with the FTL disruption matrix ready to be powered on. The 2 completed Vengeance-class ships rotated towards their arrival point. Armada killer rounds loaded and ready. The privateers were stationed nearby, should it become a fight. We watched their fleet appear on the outskirts of our solar system, just past Pluto. Nearly 200 strong, it was a daunting sight. But though they had come, they didn't act like they were approaching this as a fight. They were ready for it to be one, but from what we knew, they would have tried to drop in closer if it was one. A recognizable ship came with them. It linked up with one of their peace craft, holding there for an hour. It detached, deliberately putting space between itself and the rest of the fleet, before it vanished its FTL drive. Minutes later, it appeared close to GUS Tokyo's Vengeance, dwarfed by our ship. But its sleek design matched the first one we had encountered in space. It hailed us, a familiar Quellon appearing on the communication channel. "This is Captain Switzel of the Hopeful Wanderer. We come in peace." As soon as she spoke those words, we let out a collective sigh of relief. It was true that some of us craved further war, but now we had an opportunity to talk like adults, with our grudge now released. Achilles took the mantle of responding, showing an image of our homeworld in response. "Captain Switzel, we hear you. If you are truly peaceful, then you are welcomed. If not, I give you this one opportunity to leave." Her antenna curled. Though we still couldn't read her expressions fully, we guessed it meant she was taking things very seriously. "I assure you, I have no wish to provoke you. My ship is defenseless compared to your own. Achilles plotted a path for them to take, to arrive on Earth. He made sure they were targeted by at least half a dozen weapons throughout, should they be lying. Good. Follow the path I have sent, and do not deviate. We have had enough trouble already. Thank you. We will follow." Hopeful Wanderer kept to her word. They followed the course near perfectly, ensuring they stayed at a lower speed than we had seen before. They had a couple of smaller FTL jumps to bring them closer, but stopped well short of our atmosphere. A section of the shield was retracted, allowing them entry to our planet. There, they were met with a pair of modified aircraft, upgraded to withstand upper atmosphere conditions. They escorted the ship to a base on the Canary Islands. We had set up a reception area on them, relying on the mostly stable climate to give the best impression. The last thing we wanted was them to land in a storm, which we were unsure if they were rated for. As they landed, the leaders of the Gaian Union gathered. Some were conspicuously absent, as they were kept away should Captain Switzel prove to be a liar. By keeping them away from the greeting, a stable government could be maintained in a disaster. The dock of Hopeful Wanderer opened, revealing Captain Switzel. She was joined by new faces, each clearly old and important. One was a Zevarg, as we expected, but they came with a lumbering Crescent, a large Hypale, and 24 Avanci. They were greeted with a small fanfare, but it was muted. All parties knew of how important these talks would be. No matter what happened, the galaxy had changed. Now the results of that change would be decided. Human vengeance. Chapter 34. Opening negotiations. The delegation from the collective were shown to a conference room. Inside, they saw a long oval table with two projections showing against one end. One showed a sword with a shield placed over it. It had with an outline of Earth. The other showed a flower head constantly shifting colors. A pair of cameras looked out over these projections, giving the two AI views of the proceedings. The gathered leaders of the Union took their places before these projections. They were flanked with drilled soldiers, armed and ready should it turn into a brawl. These soldiers wore black uniforms, holding loaded rifles. They watched the collective delegation enter, eyes watching every movement. The Avanci accompanying their group adopted a similar approach, stepping behind but close by. They had each donned a form of breathing unit, wrapped tight over their mouths. Similar to the one on Assembly Station, the Crescent had a tune running into its mouth from a pair of tanks on its back. It lumbered in before Captain Switzel, the Zyvarg, and Hypale, getting its bulk in before them. The Zyvarg followed, moving its entire body to gaze around the room. Its mouth was curved upwards, much like a human smile. But this was different. It held no mirth, no joy. It was followed by Captain Switzel, who scuttled along inside. She was tense, from the body language we had come to understand from them, but she carried herself well, clearly ready for what was coming. The Hypale brought up the rear of their main group. It carried with it an oversized tablet. It casually walked in, its gait making it look like it had all the time in the world. However, it furiously tapped away on the tablet in a constant stream. There were no outward signals being detected, leading Achilles and Eve to the conclusion it was making copious amounts if notes. A hush fell over the room as everyone took their seats. It was as though everyone was taking a breath in to see who would be the first to start the negotiations. Finally, the current chairwoman of the union, Kelly Butcher, broke the tension. Welcome to the first of hopefully many meetings on Earth with the collective. As chairwoman of the Gaian Union, I hereby call this meeting to order. It was followed by a small murmur before she spoke again. My name is Kelly Butcher. With me is Jui Hang, head of Asia, Doni Gatonasova, head of Europe, Charles Greider, head of North America, Professor Anthony Trilla, head of scientific research, General Herons, head of the military, Eve, head of production, and Achilles, head of interstellar defense. As each was mentioned, they gave a wave or similar acknowledgement. Eve made her screen flash blue, whilst Achilles chose to flash red. The introductions on Earth's side met, attention turned to the collective members. The Kreshat rumbled out first, drawing attention to its bulk. I am Jizva Duro, and I am here on behalf of the collective people. You already know Captain Switzel, of the Hopeful Wanderer. That is Kitiv Wekspek, on behalf of the collective bureaucracy. Finally, there is Tadul Jipo, part of the collective record keepers. Kitiv, the Zyvarg, raised a hand in a copy of Us, as its name was called. Tadul merely carried on typing, even as its stalks looked around the room. I would like to start off by assuring you of our intentions. After what has happened, we do not wish to provoke any further bloodshed. Thousands of families already shed tears for those lost. Their sorrow is great. We hope you see the same as us, to ensure this does not grow any further. Kelly nodded, her expression grave. Thank you, Jisva. We do not wish to cause any more than has already occurred. My condolences to all those who have lost friends and family. Tadul spoke for the first time, still typing away as it spoke. You do not wish to cause any more? Yet you did cause it to begin with. For the record, why did you attack? Achilles spoke first, deliberately directing attention to him. We attacked because what else were we to do? The first we found out about you, you rained fire from the sky on us, without so much as an offer to find another way. Then, after we finally come across the collective, we found that video. We had already been attacked once out of the blue. Who knows when the next would have occurred? Kitiv gave a slow clap, letting out a long breath. I see. Your experience had clearly told you to expect such an attack when it was stated. Tell me, if your first contact with the collective had gone differently, would that have shaped your actions in a new way? General Herons cleared his throat, leaning forwards intently. Quite probably yes. From what it seems, we are an outlier to your society, in that we have found hate and a desire for revenge, one that was quelled until that video. The Zyvarg let out another long breath, turning to look at Jizva. The Kreshat gave a twitch of its trunk, leading to another breath. I figured as much. To speak plainly, your actions have shaken the collective. I cannot blame you for it, but it has to be said. However, this is something I have been gathering support for. Our first contact system is flawed. As you say, if it had been a peaceful contact, we wouldn't be in this situation. But tradition is a hard thing to fight. Jisva nudged them on the shoulder before taking over. We are a minority in trying to change the collective. Rather than culling your numbers, We should have helped mitigate the issues. You make colonies on planets that aren't adapted to your needs. If we had offered to help you relocate your excess population, or even worked with you to ensure your planet's stability, this would have all been avoided. Eve spoke up, her voice almost human, but with an edge that clearly didn't match. This is why you are here, isn't it? To further your agenda through us. You want to convince the collective that their ways are wrong and need changing by showing us as a people doing the best we could. Jisva blew through its trunks, deliberately letting the ends vibrate. You are insightful. Yes, that is indeed our goal, Jui piped up, an accent coming through the translators in place. That seems noble, but I'm sure the collective didn't sign off on those ships just to help your cause. Tadul chittered, having kept typing through it all. You are correct. Officially, we are here to first broker peace with you and set up a new official channel of communication. You made an impressive first strike, one that, to be quite honest, was terrifyingly effective. The collective hasn't had an all-out war in its entire existence, and the thought of one is causing dread. If we can have at minimum an agreement to not fight, then we can work together. Achilles spoke again, still ensuring he spoke with a robotic voice. Speaking as the head of interstellar defense, peace would be preferable. But why did it take so long for you to arrive? Switzel gave a chitter of laughter. Oh, none of them were brave enough to volunteer. Even these folks didn't want to until I said I would take them for the final jaunt. Really? Why did you choose to bring them? Her amusement faded. Your kind saved me, when you didn't have to. I have believed in your innate goodness ever since, even after the news came in. I wanted to prove you were better than the rest thought. Plus, I was the first ship you encountered actually in space. If any were to survive long enough to establish communication, it would be me.